Our broadcast is brought to you by the letter Q and the number 42. All right, so let's go ahead and get started today. So today, if we go directly to our browser here, you'll see that we're currently discussing the Advent calendar of 2018. So far, we're on our fifth day today. In the previous days, we've discussed anywhere from the good old creation of observables to the the sequences over time. So this one's fairly simple in terms of explaining schedulers. Then on the third day, we covered kind of some of the things that we were trying to do with observables, with conversion and creation type. So we covered in there, we covered the of and range and generate. Pretty simple stuff as far as I'm concerned. Just to show that that you can generate stuff pretty easily, and creating some of the easiest things that you need to do in RxJS. Now, for the fourth day, we went into some of the interesting aspects of doing timers and of doing intervals. Particularly useful in timers here are that we can schedule things at the next convenient time, but we can also schedule something to happen at a regular interval. So with a timer, we have an initial number, so it could be anything from a second to 5 seconds, and then a recurring number of the period, meaning a second from now, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So that's pretty helpful. So unlike interval, where you have a pretty much fixed time operation, so for example, it's equivalent to saying I have a timer here with let's see, of happening for a delayed for a second, and then happening every second thereafter until infinity. So that's kind of where we are today. So let's talk about what we're actually going to try and do today. So for anyone that's in here and taking a look, I say welcome, and feel free to type in a chat into the window here if you want anything answered along the way. So let's go ahead and go into it. So today we're going to be talking about conversions. So conversions are a thing unto itself of taking an existing stream and binding it in such a way that we can convert it to an observable. So we have a lot of those capabilities, as we've talked about in the previous entry here, when we're talking about creating observables the easy way. So we have bind callback, which binds the regular callback, say for example on air, or window to on air, or something, or FS, even FS exists in Node. Something that's simple and just tells you, for example, whether it has whether the file exists or not. Bind node callback. So these are more legacy issues that we're talking about here, because that now that Node is exposing promises in a way, but we can still use the typical bind and error back that Node is known for, where the error is always first, and you check if the error is there, do something else, do something with the result, which is usually the second parameter. Now, what I really want to cover here are two different things that I think are the interesting ones. From is kind of this grab bag, as it were, of any number of conversions. So it could take an array, a promise, observable, iterable, you name it. And it's kind of explicitly said in here in terms of from array, from iterable, from observable, and from promise. But let's actually dive into the code, because then it might make a little bit more sense, because once again, the easiest source of truth is to sometimes just dive directly into the code itself. So let's dive into the code here. So we can see here that we have, so if you go into an internal, and so source, RxJS source internal, go into observable. So observable, the directory here, it mostly serves as kind of the operator, not the operator, but the factory of how you create observables, but also in a way of how you statically merge them together. So not only do you have your standard bind callback and bind node callback that we've had, we also have the stream combining sequences in here, such as combined latest, concat, merge, and race, and fork join, and those kinds of things, which kind of determine how things are done. So let's go ahead and dive into from. So as you can see, it already takes in a number of pieces here from different imports, whether it's an array, so from array, from promise, from iterable, and from observable. So we've got a number of things that we can basically look at. And what it also says is that if it also follows what observable input is. And observable input we can take a look at is here, and look for observable input, and there it is. So here, the observable input is something that's subscribable, which means has a subscribe, as we notice here, whether it has a partial observer and then an unsubscribable, which is basically something with an unsubscribe method. And then we have it's either array-like, so it's an array, so it's got it's indexable and it's got a length. And then you've got iterable, which implements the symbol.iterator contract. So going back into our code here, going back into observable, so we can take a look here and go back and say, so if it's already an iterable, or if it's an array, or it's a promise, it's considered observable input. And so it falls through to this nice little category here. What I forgot to mention is what from observable actually looks like. And so RxJS itself implements a piece that just like the system that the iterable implements via symbol.iterator, we have symbol.observable in there, and so we have the ability to take anything such as Redux or any of the other observable libraries that are out there and be able to convert them into the RxJS world and do it safely. So going from there, if it's a promise, checking if a promise unfortunately is not very precise. It's checking to see if it has a then method, those kinds of things. Is array-like I said, it has a length and is indexable, and from iterable. But what you'll notice in each individual piece here is that we have a scheduler. So scheduler, 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 scheduler. And why that's important is because when we're creating observables, we always need to think about the the piece here where we're actually going to what was I going to say? Oh, never mind. So yeah, what the scheduler does is basically says how and where and when are you going to emit these particular things. And so for mocking purposes, for testing purposes, and what have you, we've got the ability to control that virtually through our virtual time scheduler, or just to say from array use the request animation frame or something like that scheduler to do that, so that each individual thing is actually done on a repaint. So let's dive into the code here, and what we do with an array is actually fairly interesting in that we have here, if we don't actually provide a scheduler here, it's just going to go right through it. There's really necessarily no need at this point, because we just wanted to make it fast as possible to go through the subject and go through it and spit it out as fast as possible. However, if we do give it a scheduler, such as request animation frame, ASAP, or what have you, what it will do is it'll every single item it will come through and add a subscription. So here it'll add a subscription which our scheduler.schedule, as we talked about in the previous piece, when we called scheduler.schedule, then we return a subscription so you can cancel it at any point. So all we're doing really here is just basically saying, hey, if we're at the end here, hit complete and return. There's no need to do anything else. Otherwise, we call next with our input, and hey, if the subscriber is closed, add an empty schedule, basically. So it's nothing really complex, and what you'll find is a lot of these from iterable and so forth kind of follow the same the same logic, really, in that we need to but this time knowing that the iterator contract basically has the next, error, and return methods, which are kind of analogous to the observer methods that we have of next, error, and complete. So we want to make sure that when we finish a particular piece, that we are calling iterator.return, and thus having any cleanup that you want to do. So like try, catch, finally, the return stuff gets called there. Anyways, it's not really that much much different here. As we get the iterator, always as before, and we call schedule on it if it's already closed. The subscriber's already closed. If not, we continue and say we get the next, and whether it's done or not. Catching errors, because remember we can send that iterables, unlike arrays, can actually throw errors because you're going for yield, throw error, whoops. And those kinds of things, and then say return 42, which will never happen. But you'll have these two values here that we can pull out, and then if it's already done, then we can say complete, else we can go on to the next and continue on from there. So it's not really super interesting or super hard, but like I said, it is the scheduler controls, like I said, everything in terms of how things are actually done. So from promise, there's really not much interesting here either, in the fact that you're going to take the input that's coming through, and you're going to call then on it, taking in the value, and then you schedule it through our scheduler here. And then catching any errors via the second callback. You could do it through a .catch, doesn't really matter, but it adds an additional schedule here to schedule the error if it should happen going through there. So pretty simple, pretty easy in the fact that you always have to bounce it to the next thing to say it's complete, and go on from there. And from observable is another one in that, once again, it's pretty easy in the fact that all you're doing is either you're returning a new observable and escaping all that hash. But if you do give us a scheduler, and I think just to give you an idea of how things kind of work, it's kind of cool just to see that how the scheduler actually works in terms of taking the next error and complete and then forwarding it on through the scheduler.schedule to the subscriber, through to the subscriber. So that pretty much covers, well, not totally covers, but it pretty much covers in the fact that subscribe to, actually, let me go back here to subscribe to iterable is actually a utility. So if we go back to our util, if we didn't actually call any of these particular things, we do a shortcut. So if we say subscribe to, and this has array like is promise and so forth, which is kind of like a re-implementation of from, as it were. So subscribing to array, so this is kind of what happens if you don't give us a scheduler. So you say subscribe to array, boom, 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 next as fast as humanly possible, as long as the subscriber is not closed. And iterable, same thing, try catch along the way. And we go and we do the thing that we need to do. Actually, we don't have, never mind. Subscribe to observable, we have here as we get our system.observable, symbol.observable, and then just call subscribe directly on it. And subscribe to promise is basically saying in a thenable, next, and complete immediately without that extra hop. And then go to subscriber error, and then we can also report the host error if we need to. So, like I said, it's a lot, I know, to kind of get your hands around, but the exercises that we're going to do as part of this will kind of make it more interesting and more concrete. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit more then at this point. And so let's go and look back at the from event. So from event, I think, is also fairly interesting in that we want to make it as easily as humanly possible to subscribe to an event, whether it's coming from the DOM or node or what have you, or if you even have a jQuery style, if you like the on-off. Then we have event targets, add and remove, and node style of add listener, remove event listener. Most people use the on, like emitter.on or whatever, but there's no analogous off, which is kind of unfortunate, but they do have add listener and remove listener. So with that, then we've got the node compatible one. We've got a jQuery one. So if you're still using something that uses on and off, and then has event target. So we basically go through there and determine what kind of thing that you have, and that we are trying to, of course, get rid of a lot of the result selectors and stuff like that. And this is kind of legacy stuff, but the main idea basically is that you come through and whatever arguments you get as part of your event args gets forwarded to. So if it's an array, which some of the well, not an array, but a spread of arguments, And if you get arguments, then you can just basically start sending those along directly as an array. Because subscribers themselves can't take more than one value at a time. It doesn't understand the role of var args or anything like that. So you basically you call subscriber next on what happens there, and you set up the subscription, and that just checks on how you do it through add event listener, on add listener, or otherwise. And if it's a if it's a DOM event list or something like that, where you can you want to subscribe to the inner pieces, we can do that automatically by setting up a subscription directly on the parent, and then all the children will have the event attached to it. And then we have the unsubscribe there, which does the teardown, which is our usual off or remove event listener and those sorts of calls. So when you unsubscribe from an event, you get that taken care of, that completion taken care of automatically for you. Now, from event patterns, so what I wanted to do with this was the idea that that events could happen in any number of ways, through an event emitter, through an event emitter, through jQuery, through React, whatever style that you want. I'm not going to judge you, basically. You can do whatever you want to. It just gives you the ability to say on or off yourself, whether it, or if you need to support IE8 with attach event and detach event, you can do that too. So that's the general idea here, is that and sometimes that your registration method, for example, could also return a token, an unsubscribed token of some way, somehow, and you want that to flow through, and luckily it will through from event pattern. So it's not just only handing you the handler that you can turn, which you can delegate to the event listener, which then calls next and all of that. You can also have a token returned or some other value that that lets you know that you can unregister with there. So that's basically all I wanted to cover for today. And so what's nice about that, like I said, is that we've got a lot of information that we can go ahead and do with that. So why don't I just go ahead and start typing away here. So let's go here and start with creating an index.ts. And from there we can bring in any number of pieces. So for example, we could say import, and I want from, and I want that from RxJS, or actually I'll start pulling in all of them, from array, from iterable, and from promise. All right, there we are. Okay. So we have declarations unused. Cool. That's okay. Oh, that's right. We don't actually export those. But from takes care of all of that for you. I'm such a silly person for forgetting that. Anyway, so what we can do is we can say const array is equal to 1. We have 1, 2, 3, and we can then call array dollar is equal to from array. Okay. And then we can subscribe to that pretty easily by just calling array, not subscribe, and don't need to care too much about what we're doing here. Just say console.log, next, and x, because I'm forgetting that. All right, so we got that, and let's do complete handler, which then we can just say console.log. Cool. So now, if we go in npx ts-node of 05 the index of ts, ta-da, 0, 1, 2, 3. Happened pretty darn fast, as you remember. Now, if I brought in something like the ASAP scheduler, which we can do, we can then call. There we go. Oops. So let's actually dive into that instead of actually looking at it. I'm a big dumb dummy. All right, let's go to there. All right. So, good Lord. All right. Yes, thank you. I'm a big dummy. Sorry, I fixed that. All right, so here we are. So we've got the ASAP scheduler that we brought in, and now we can change it up. And what it'll do is that it goes pretty fast, but like I said, is that the ASAP scheduler does pretty fast. It's at a micro task like level. So let's create an iterable this time. So const iterable. And that'll equal to a function star, and so then we can yield a few numbers, yield 1, yield 2, yield 3, and then return 42. Doesn't really mean much of anything, but now we can say const iterable is equal to from iterable. Okay, and now we've passed in our piece, which is now our iterable iterator function, and then we can say ASAP scheduler as well here, and so we can subscribe to the results just as we did up above. So iterable $. Dot subscribe, and then we can do that. So let's get rid of the first piece because we don't need it anymore, and move on to the next piece. So goes through and oh, lovely. I think I forgot some TypeScript-y stuff. Anyways, trust me, it works, and I don't feel like fixing it right now. So let's move on here to the next piece. I think I need to add some TS compile options, but I'll do that later in the cleanup. So we can also do a promise. So const promise is equal to promise.resolve 42. Pretty simple. Here, and then we can create that into our stream from promise, and then, as always, subscribe to it. Really? Okay, I'm really getting hosed here. So maybe I do need to change my targeting library here. If anyone feels free to do that, I'll take a pull request right now for it. But otherwise, I just like to kind of keep on going here. But just let me know in the chat. So moving along, and like I said, this is my first go around for doing this for a while. So as I said, that I'm a little rusty, but I'm getting there. So now we can also do observables. So if I said here import observable as well, observable, all right, and actually, and then we can do here, we can say const obs $ is equal to new observable number and passing an observer, and say observer dot next 42 and then observer dot complete. Ta-da! All right, and then here we'll just say dot subscribe and passing in the same thing as we did before. Cool, 42 and complete. All right, so now that we've covered the basic conversions there, let's talk about the from pattern here. So what we need to do is we need to get the event listener, as it were. So to do that, we'll need to import the typical using the import statements. So let's see, if we do import event emitter events, do we not have cannot find events? Lovely. Oh yeah. I need to really why don't I do that the next time, and I'll have all the rest of these fixed and go from there instead of having to try and waste everyone's time here. So I think 30 minutes is good enough here. So if you have any questions right now, feel free to put them in the chat window. Otherwise, I will see you all soon. And see you for tomorrow, when we'll be talking more about the conversion operators, and then going on there, the idea to move forward, going on the pieces of actually doing something interesting with the data, such as doing pipes and then of course combining the sequences. So let me know, like I said, in the comments here. I would love to hear your feedback and how I can improve, and so on and so forth. So thank you all very much for coming in. I appreciate it, and I hope to get better at this as time goes along. So unless I hear anything, I will sign off. So thank you all very much.